Ever feel like a total fraud, even though like you've shipped perfectly good code?
Mm-hmm.
It's like maybe you snuck in through the back door of this whole software development world,
Right.
and any minute now they're going to realize you have no idea what you're doing.
Yeah.
You and just about every other dev out there.
Uh-huh.
We're diving deep today into episode 4 of CodeSkill Chronicles.
Okay.
It's called Imposter Syndrome and Other Code Gremlins, to help you wrangle those nasty little confidence crushers.
What's interesting about this source is it doesn't just tell you to, like, believe in yourself.
Right.
It gives you real strategies for busting through imposter syndrome at all levels of your career.
And they kick things off with this really relatable anecdote about the host spending an hour staring at a regex, feeling totally lost.
Oh, yeah.
Regex, by the way, is that shorthand code for finding patterns in text.
Right.
And even seasoned devs can get tripped up by it sometimes.
Oh, for sure.
But the point is, everyone feels that sting of doubt, from the junior dev fresh out of boot camp to the senior architect with a decade of experience.
It's easy to think you're the only one who struggles.
Yeah.
Especially when everyone else seems to be, like, confidently churning out code.
Right.
But this source makes it clear feeling like an imposter is practically a rite of passage in the software world.
Totally. So what can you do about it? Well, the source suggests a strategy for each experience level.
Okay.
Juniors lean into breaking down complex problems into bite-sized pieces. Don't be afraid to ask dumb questions.
Yeah.
Chances are someone else is wondering the same thing.
Yeah.
And you know that whole fake it till you make it thing.
Yeah.
Turns out there's some merit to that, at least in terms of projecting confidence until the real deal kicks in.
I agree that projecting confidence can be beneficial, but I think it's crucial to be mindful of the potential pitfalls.
Right.
Faking it for too long can lead to burnout and increased pressure.
Yeah.
It's about finding a balance between projecting confidence and acknowledging your own learning curve.
That's such a good point. You don't want to set unrealistic expectations for yourself or others.
Exactly.
So for those of you in the mid-level zone, the source emphasizes embracing the challenges that come with code reviews and debugging.
Uh-huh.
It's easy to feel defeated when your code gets torn apart in review.
For sure.
But remember, it's an opportunity to learn and grow.
Exactly. And those moments when you're banging your head against the keyboard trying to figure out why your code isn't working,
Yeah.
those aren't failures. They're chances to hone your problem-solving skills.
Totally.
And for our senior developers out there, leading teams isn't about having all the answers. It's about knowing how to find them. Admitting you don't know something can actually foster a more collaborative environment.
It's like showing vulnerability makes you more human and approachable, which can build trust within a team.
Okay.
But let's get practical here. How do we actually silence that inner critic that keeps telling us we're not good enough?
Right.
This is where the source really shines. They introduce this concept of a wins log.
I love this idea. It's so simple, yet effective. Essentially, you keep a running log of all your successes, big or small. It could be as simple as fixing a tricky bug, completing a feature ahead of schedule, or even just helping a teammate solve a problem.
Right.
By documenting these wins, you create tangible evidence against that negative self-talk.
It's like building a case file for your own competence.
Exactly.
Instead of letting those doubts swirl around in your head, you have concrete examples of your skills and achievements to refer back to.
Right.
You can even categorize your wins by skill or project, making it easy to see your progress over time.
It's a powerful tool for shifting your perspective. Instead of focusing on what you haven't achieved yet, you're celebrating what you have accomplished.
Yeah.
It can be a real game changer for building confidence and resilience.
Absolutely. And you know, it doesn't even have to be a fancy, elaborate system. You could just use a simple note-taking app, a spreadsheet, or even a good old-fashioned notebook.
Right.
The key is to make it a habit. Take a few minutes each day to reflect on your wins and jot them down.
For sure.
Trust me, future, you will thank you for it.
I couldn't agree more. But, you know, imposter syndrome isn't the only gremlin lurking in the code.
Oh, right.
The source also dives into this sneaky little monster they call the perfectionism gremlin.
The perfectionism gremlin. This one is like that voice in your head that says your code isn't good enough until it's absolutely flawless, perfectly optimized, and elegantly crafted, even if no one but you will ever see those lines.
Yeah, it's a trap that many developers fall into, especially those early in their careers. The source shares an anecdote about the host spending hours polishing a toy app to perfection, only to realize later that it wasn't actually solving a real problem or adding any value to the world.
It's so easy to get caught up in the pursuit of technical perfection, that we lose sight of the bigger picture. Like, is this code actually solving a user need? Is it maintainable? Is it scalable?
Yeah.
Sometimes good enough really is good enough, especially when you're working on real-world projects with deadlines and budgets.
Exactly. And this perfectionism gremlin can manifest in different ways depending on your experience level.
Right.
For juniors, it might be rewriting code multiple times for elegance, but missing deadlines in the process.
Mid-level developers might fall into the trap of over-engineering solutions, which can lead to performance issues down the line.
Right. Imagine a mid-level developer building a simple web app. Instead of using a straightforward approach, they decide to implement a complex caching system with multiple layers of abstraction, even though the app only has a handful of users.
Okay.
While the caching system itself might be technically impressive,
Yeah.
it adds unnecessary complexity and could actually slow down the app for those few users.
Ouch. That's a perfect example of how perfectionism can backfire. And for senior developers, the challenge is guiding their teams to find that balance between quality and pragmatism.
It's about recognizing that shipping working software is often more valuable than striving for an unattainable ideal of perfection to combat this perfectionism gremlin. The source suggests a really cool technique, setting a done timer.
I love this. So basically, you allocate a specific amount of time for refining your code, and when the timer goes off, you're done.
Yeah.
No more tweaking, no more second guessing. You ship it.
It's a great way to break free from that endless cycle of optimization and actually get things done. I would add that it's also helpful to define what good enough actually means for a particular project or task.
Yeah.
What are the essential criteria that need to be met? What are the potential consequences of not achieving absolute perfection?
That's such a crucial point. It's about setting realistic expectations and understanding that perfection is often an illusion, especially in the ever-evolving world of software development. By defining good enough, you create a clear target to aim for and avoid getting lost in the weeds of unnecessary refinements. But, we've talked about imposter syndrome, we've tackled the perfectionism gremlin, but there's one more sneaky critter we need to address, the comparison gremlin.
Ah, yes. The comparison gremlin. This one thrives in the world of social media and online developer communities where it's all too easy to get caught up in comparing yourself to others.
It's like you're scrolling through Twitter and you see all these developers showcasing their amazing projects, their perfectly clean code, their dream job offers, and suddenly you feel like you're not good enough, like you're falling behind in the race.
It's important to remember that social media often presents a curated and often unrealistic view of reality. People tend to highlight their successes and downplay their struggles.
Yeah.
Comparing your behind the scenes with someone else's highlight reel is a recipe for feeling inadequate.
The source gives this perfect example of comparing your little project with its handful of commits and maybe a typo or two to some rockstar developer's 10,000-star repository on GitHub.
Yeah.
It's enough to make anyone question their abilities.
And this comparison game can affect developers at all stages of their careers.
Juniors might compare their beginnings to someone else's middle or end, feeling discouraged by the perceived gap in experience and achievements.
Mid-level developers might fall into the trap of measuring their progress against the unicorns of the industry. Those developers who seem to effortlessly churn out amazing projects and land dream jobs.
And even seniors might find themselves comparing their accomplishments or salaries, feeling the need to validate their experience through constant comparisons with others.
For sure.
The source tells this great story about the host initially envying another developer's flashy side project, only to realize later that their own less glamorous project had actually quietly generated significant value for a client. It's a powerful reminder that outward appearances don't always tell the full story.
Absolutely. And to combat this comparison gremlin, the source suggests a strategy they call muting the noise.
Muting the noise. I love that it's about consciously unfollowing accounts or limiting your exposure to content that triggers those feelings of comparison and inadequacy. It's about taking control of your online environment and curating it to be supportive and inspiring rather than a source of anxiety.
It's not about isolating yourself or avoiding all forms of comparison. It's about being selective and intentional about the information you consume. What are your thoughts on this? Do you have any other tactics for managing social media and staying focused on your own goals?
One thing that's helped me is Actively seeking out content that focuses on the learning process rather than just the end result. Accounts that share behind-the-scenes struggles, debugging adventures,
Mhm.
and honest reflections on what it really takes to build something.
Right.
It's a good reminder that everyone faces challenges,
Yes.
even those who seem to have it all figured out.
That's so key. And remember, everyone's journey is unique. Comparing your progress to someone else's is like comparing apples and oranges.
Right?
You have different backgrounds, experiences, goals, and resources.
Mm-hmm.
It's far more productive to focus on your own path and celebrate your own milestones, however big or small.
It's about defining success on your own terms, not by someone else's yardstick, right?
Exactly.
So we've really unpacked these three code gremlins: imposter syndrome,
Mm-hmm.
the perfectionism gremlin,
Right.
and the comparison gremlin.
Mm-hmm.
They're common challenges, but as our source points out, they don't have to control us.
This source encourages us to remember that we're problem solvers.
Right.
We tackle complex technical challenges for a living, so why not apply those same skills to these internal struggles?
It's a total mindset shift.
Exactly.
We're not helpless victims to these gremlins. We have the power to manage them.
Absolutely. By
Hmm.
acknowledging them, understanding their impact, and using the strategies we've discussed, you can create a more positive and fulfilling developer journey.
So to recap the actionable advice from this episode, to combat imposter syndrome, start that wins log.
Yeah.
Seriously, even just a few minutes a day can make a huge difference.
To tame the perfectionism gremlin, try setting those done timers. It forces you to ship and move on. And don't forget to define what good enough actually means for each project.
And finally, to silence the comparison gremlin, be mindful of your social media intake, mute the noise coming from accounts that trigger those negative feelings, focus on your own journey, and celebrate your unique progress.
Remember, you're not alone in this. We all face these challenges.
And with the right strategies and support, we can learn to manage them. So as you wrap up this deep dive, think about which of these gremlins tends to pester you the most.
Yeah.
What negative thoughts or patterns hold you back, and how can you apply what we've discussed to overcome them? Maybe it's starting that wins log, setting those done timers, or curating your online world to be more supportive, whatever it is. Take that first step towards taming those gremlins and embracing your awesome developer self. Until next time, happy coding.